Warning. The following video contains strong language that some viewers may find offensive or disturbing.
People no longer bound by their non-disclosure agreements. What can you now disclose? My best friend worked at a roadside attraction near Chattanooga, TN, called Ruby Falls. There's something else called Ruby Falls elsewhere in the country. It's supposedly a waterfall inside a cave. Of course. The trail to the cave is redone with all sorts of rock brought in from around the world. I think they've owned up to that part now. But the waterfall itself is barely a trickle naturally. And then only in the wetter season. They've run a pipe up there to supplement the falls. Hidden by cracks and crevices and cemented over. And powered by a pump off to the side. Which you can't hear when the water is splashing down from 100 feet overhead. It's 99% from the city of Chattanooga or maybe Lookout Mountain municipal water supply. Of course, with such a wet area, old electrical wires going back to the Great Depression, and 300 feet underground, it sputters, or shorts out and stops every now and then. The first rule in the falls room is make everybody leave immediately if the power goes out. Not for safety, but because the fable agreed upon will be shown as fake. The book you're reading might only be a bestseller because the author had enough money to buy thousands and thousands of copies. Have them shipped to a warehouse for storage. And eventually destroyed. I worked at a small bakery in New York City when I was younger. Every morning the bakery would take their day-old cupcakes and deliver them to a tour company that did Sex and the City tours. The tour company would pass our cupcakes off as cupcakes from Magnolia. And significantly much more popular bakery. When I was fired from Auntie Anne's in 2010, I signed a 10-year non-compete (NDA) contract. Promising not to detail the baking secrets or work for another pretzel establishment. Well, that ended this year, so now I can run out and start a pretzel store because the secret I was keeping was making pretzels literally requires two products. One of them being water and the other a large bag of pretzel meal dust powder. Quite literally anyone with $2,500 can start a pretzel stand and make perfectly fine pretzels. It's not difficult whatsoever. Edit, I signed the letter when I was hired, but I got a copy with my termination letter. I used to work for a large gas station chain. I worked at its warehouse where it creates a lot of the donuts. The room was really hot, so we were always sweating. There's some machines where the donuts get glazed in chocolate. They're these small machines, they look almost like a barbecue grill. They always wanted us to be super fast glazing the donuts. Working in a hot room and working at super fast speeds, it was natural for a lot of people's sweat to just drip in the chocolate underneath us. Never eat the chocolate donuts from a gas station. McDonald's made me sign a NDA regarding a robbery that took place during a graveyard shift. They made me take a fucking polygraph test because they thought my ex and I were involved due to the simple fact that I had stopped by that day to pick up some documents. I was a manager. I had business to do. Fuck you, McMierda. The secret ingredient in Jimmy John's tuna salad is Kikkoman's soy sauce. I make my tuna with soy sauce now. I only worked there for a short time, so I was never allowed to make the tuna, but a friend that worked with me told me the recipe. They're funny with their NDAs. You know NDAs are only good if you have the money to sue? Worked with a company that didn't pay me, so I told them their NDA didn't apply. They threatened to sue. My response, you can't even afford to pay me. You sure as hell can't afford to sue. Single quote. That married grocery store manager in his late 40s was, indeed, having sex with that 17-year-old courtesy clerk in the compressor room. This was 15 plus years ago when I was a person in charge. And not yet a full assistant store manager. Our store in the back room had a couple of rooms upstairs, a large room that housed all of our electrical breakers and backup generators. And a room that housed all of our compressors that kept our freezers and coolers running. Both were locked at all times for security reasons. They were accessible only through the back room. The 17-year-old courtesy clerk, Bagger, had worked there for a while. She was, not the best worker. She had a habit of disappearing for a half hour or hour at a time. I, and the other picks complained and tried discipline. But the store manager blocked it. So, we just dealt with it. Yes, she was an attractive blonde. I was in charge one night and we got an alarm that one of the compressors was low. It was my job to check the level, record the compressor number, and turn it in. When I went up to the room, the door was propped open with a bucket. I assumed whoever worked in the room last left it open. If you have never been in a compressor room before, I have to tell you that it is loud. Our store had several diesel engines that powered the compressors. I proceed into the back of the room. Come around a corner to see the girl. Not quite naked, but not fully clothed. Being serviced by our store manager, who had left for the day hours ago. Neither saw me and I hightailed it out of there. I wrestled with what to do. I was worried about my career at the time. So I called the security hotline and made an anonymous call and told them in vague terms what happened and that they should contact me about details. I'm 100% certain that they knew it was me that called. A couple of days later, the store manager is suspended. And I'm interviewed. The assistant store manager is interviewed. And the pics. They tell us not to discuss it. So of course we did. I was a little late to the party. Almost everyone knew. The store manager would use his store keys to come into the back room, meet the courtesy clerk, and then would hook up in the compressor room. She was not the first teenager he had done this with at this store and others. They fire the store manager. And like an idiot, he sues. Dozens of people are deposed. NDAs are drawn up and signed. He thinks better of it. Drops the suit and that's the last I ever heard of him. The girl quit right after the store manager was suspended. I signed an NDA after negotiating a six-figure settlement with my mortgage lender. Back in 2013, the bank illegally sold my home. While I was living there and making monthly payments. I discovered this when new owners evicted me and my 3 kids. At the time, I thought someone was trying to steal my identity, etc. I spent the next 2 years writing legal documents and had to represent myself in court. The bank owned every legit legal firm I contacted. Also, the first lawyer I hired took my last $7,000 and was promptly disbarred for misconduct with previous cases. I had no money, no home, but I had a laptop, printer and access to the county court law library. We were about a week away from selecting a jury, when we came to a settlement agreement. In the end, each of my kids, now in their 20s, got an inexpensive new car and I live at the beach. Which bank, you ask? I can't tell you the name. But might I suggest that it rhymes with case? They settled because they were worried that if the case went to trial, it would become public. Then, everyone would know, for certain, that they had lied, cheated and swindled to steal homes from hardworking people. The bank would lose when no one took out new loans with them. Edit, I received a posting on my front door. I went to the eviction court and lost. Because technically the new owners paid for my house. I was given 7 days to move all my stuff, had lived there 13 years, or face the sheriff. I had 3 kids. I didn't want the drama of handcuffs. So we packed and moved. Then sought relief through the court system. I was a contractor for NASA. I still fully support the agency. But I was extremely bugged when I learned that each separate NASA center e.g., JPL, Kennedy, Ames, Goddard, hides many of its inventions and breakthroughs from the other centers so that when HQ is ready to assign a big mission and a lot of dollars to one center, they have a better chance to compete over the others. Look what we invented. Ames can't do this over there. Give us the next moon orbiter. The downside is that there is a ton of reinvention and duplicated efforts going on. Sometimes years of work go down the drain when another center does the same thing faster. My perspective was, you all work for NASA. Share knowledge. Collaborate. I was frequently ordered to tone down anything revealing when speaking to other centers. I disclosed to a minority partner that the majority partner owed him $100K. He could have easily received a check for that amount. But he sued for $700K. Spent $300K on a lawyer and got nothing. This is something I could spend a lot of time diving into. But the subprime lending company I used to work for as a software engineer spent a lot of time and effort manipulating the UX of our various applications to encourage customers to accept loan terms that were not necessarily in their best interest. I quit pretty quickly after realizing that the people in charge had very little interest in actually supporting us in making a product that would be better for our customers. I was once an IT contractor for a now-defunct bureau within the Department of the Interior during the event Deepwater Horizon disaster. Since the department has its hands in offshore drilling, they were part of the response team and boots on the ground. Anyway, it's a little-known fact that all the extra stress plus aging IT equipment during the first 48 hours after the blowout took their entire authentication and email infrastructure down, Active Directory and Exchange, for 2 days. There were also other weird glitches from offices around the U.S., not related to the outage. A switch going out here, building automation there. It was a fucking disaster. This was, of course, after years of emails and documentation stating they were heading that way. I was directly involved with recovering that infrastructure and the aftermath of dissolving the bureau. Which really wasn't anything special. They just became 3 different bureaus, got new email addresses, and continued on in their role under a new title: Edit, Words and Detail. I once had to sign an NDA to get a price on a printer for my sign shop. This was a printer that was only sold by one distributor, by the way, so there wasn't even any direct competition on this particular model. I think their gimmick was that if they make a really big deal out of giving you this super secret pricing that you'd be lulled into thinking it was really something special. Edit, interesting comment by you, Beard Stash Man below, who probably has the right idea as to what was going on with this practice. The owner of the company is an absolute psycho. They have been trying to hire developers for years now, and despite paying really well, they can't keep them. I quit after 3 days. I was trying to help out on a high-priority bug on my 3rd day. When I said all the requests to X endpoint are failing, to which he replied, I see 1 out of approximately 500 requests succeeding. Does that sound like all to you? He then called a company-wide all-hands meeting, and proceeded to tell everyone how important it is that we all speak carefully. And that we don't need fucking retards like me lying to the company, making it harder to diagnose issues. I told him to go fuck himself and quit on the spot. Turns out the company has a big history of this. My boss, who had been there for 2 weeks, had tried to quit the week prior, but was convinced to stay on to meet me. He left a few days after me. Apparently a few people got together and tried to tell the owner that he needs to watch how he talks to people. And he blew up on them about it too. I later heard that I was something like the 10th person to quit within their first month in a row. The sad truth is that the dude actually seems pretty smart, but has been acting like a megalomaniac while he pisses his money away and abuses his employees that are for whatever reason unwilling to leave. We reused buffet-style food served in a cafeteria that we're supposed to compost and record as waste. The health inspector says anything that's left open buffet style and serve yourself can't be taken back and repurposed because it's not monitored and could be cross-contaminated or many other things. Nobody should ever eat buffet style if avoidable, FYI, but the Fortune 500 company I worked for was unhappy about the money they were losing by composting the food, so they make us keep it and re-serve it later or repurpose it into soup or casserole or something. Personally, I never did this and just waited for my boss to leave and compost the food, but others I worked with were too worried about losing their jobs to go against orders. I didn't want to be fired but felt morally obligated to not feed people food that was meant to be garbage. So I just sneaky tossed it out when nobody was looking because I got paid really well there. We all had to sign NDAs saying we wouldn't tell the media or non-employees about recipes and procedures that covered leftover food and food waste. Eventually my boss discovered what I was doing and I stood up to him about not being willing to reuse garbage as food, so we agreed that I'd just quit because while they could force me not to talk about it, they couldn't actually force me to do something illegal for my job, and I was clearly refusing to do it. For watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. See you next time.